The morning I discovered my life savings had been reduced to $211, I was still wearing my late wife's apron, the one with the faded sunflowers, because I had been making Daniel's favorite breakfast, blueberry pancakes, from scratch, because my son was coming home. I remember the exact sound the spoon made against the mixing bowl, a hollow, rhythmic clink that echoed through the kitchen the same way it had for 32 years. Margaret used to hum while I cooked. She'd lean against the counter with her coffee hair still tousled from sleep, and hum something halfway between a hymn and whatever song had been playing on the radio the night before. The kitchen felt full when she did that, full in the way that only becomes obvious after the fullness is gone. She passed 14 months before that morning, pancreatic cancer, 61 days from diagnosis to the last breath I ever heard her take. I won't write more about that. Some things deserve to live only inside the man who carries them. What I will write about is Daniel, my son. My 34-year-old son who drove up to the house in a leased BMW he hadn't mentioned, who hugged me for exactly 3 seconds before reaching for his phone, who sat at the kitchen table and ate 6 of my blueberry pancakes while explaining, with the calm certainty of someone who has rehearsed the words, why I should let him take over the finances. Dad, you're 63, you've been managing everything alone since Mom died. The investments, the bills, the accounts, it's a lot for one person. He poured more syrup. He didn't look up. I've been doing a lot of reading about elder financial planning. I just want to help. Let me take the burden off you. Elder financial planning? He said it the way people say a difficult word they've been practicing, carefully, like he was placing it on the table gently so I wouldn't notice what it really meant. I want to be honest about what I felt in that moment because I think honesty is the only thing left that belongs entirely to me. I felt grateful. That is the truth I am most ashamed of. My son sat across from me eating the breakfast I made using words like burden and planning, and I felt grateful. I thought Margaret would be glad. She always worried I'd be alone in this part of life. She used to say, promise me you'll let Daniel help when the time comes, and I had promised. So when the time apparently came, I let him. Don't worry about the account, Dad, he said, standing up and carrying his plate to the sink, a gesture so domestic it almost fooled me completely. I'll handle everything. I signed the paperwork that afternoon. He had it ready. That detail didn't register until much later that he had arrived at my home on a Sunday morning with legal documents already printed and tabbed with those little sticky arrows that say sign here in red letters. I signed where the arrows told me to sign. I trusted the arrows. I trusted my son. The first 3 months were fine, better than fine actually. Daniel called every Sunday more than he had called in the previous 2 years combined. He'd give me brief, cheerful reports. Everything's in order, Dad. Made a small adjustment to the portfolio. Your utility bills are all set up on auto pay, nothing to worry about. I stopped checking the mail with the same vigilance I once had. I started spending Sunday mornings the way Margaret always wanted me to, reading, gardening, taking the long walk around the reservoir instead of sitting at the kitchen table with a calculator and a pile of envelopes. I realize now that this is what relief feels like just before it becomes something else entirely. It was a Tuesday in October when I first felt the prickle. I had run out of coffee and driven to the grocery store, which is something I ordinarily do with the quiet pleasure of a man who has no pressing schedule. I like the grocery store on Tuesday mornings. The produce section smells like cold water and earth. The old men in the deli section nod at each other. It is one of the small dignities of retired life, and I had come to value it. My card was declined. I remember the sound of the machine. That flat, airless beep that seems designed to carry across a quiet store and land specifically in the center of your chest. The young woman at the register had the decency to look at her screen instead of at me. Would you like to try a different card? She asked. I said yes. I tried my other card. Same sound. I paid for the coffee with the $23 in cash I happened to have in my jacket pocket and walked back to my car. I sat in the parking lot for a long time, then I drove to the bank. The woman at the bank was named Patricia according to her name tag, and she had the practiced composure of someone who has delivered difficult news many times without letting it become personal. She pulled up my account. She looked at the screen. She looked at me. She looked at the screen again. Mr. Calloway, she said, the primary checking account currently has a balance of $211. $211. I have spent 38 years as a mechanical engineer. I retired with $412,000 in savings, a pension that pays me $2,100 a month, and a house that has been paid off since 2009. I am not a wealthy man, but I am a man who has been careful. Margaret and I live carefully. We drove our cars until they stopped. We took one vacation a year, always somewhere we could drive to, always somewhere with a good state park. We ate at restaurants on birthdays and anniversaries. We put Daniel through college without loans. We were careful people. $211. Patricia helped me pull the transaction history. She did this quietly without commentary, which I appreciated more than I could tell her. I sat across from her desk and read what my account had become over the previous 92 days. A story told in withdrawals, transfers to an account I didn't recognize, payments to companies I had never heard of, a wire transfer to a property management company in a state where I own no property, cashback advances, investment platform deposits. A recurring monthly charge from a luxury car leasing company. The leased BMW in my driveway. I think the moment I understood completely was when I saw that charge. Because it was such a small thing, $312 a month for a car, against the backdrop of everything else that had been taken. But it was the charge that made it real. My son was leasing a luxury car with my money and parking it in my driveway and eating my blueberry pancakes and calling me every Sunday to tell me everything was in order. Here is what I know about Daniel and what I should have examined more carefully long before that Tuesday in October. He was a gifted child. I mean that precisely. He was gifted in the way that sometimes exhausts itself before it becomes wisdom. He was the kind of boy who could convince any teacher that the late assignment wasn't really late, that the rule didn't quite apply in his specific case, that the circumstances were unique. He was charming in a way that Margaret called a superpower, and that I privately thought of as something we ought to carefully watch. We watched, we corrected, we loved him. We perhaps corrected less firmly than we should have because he was an only child and Margaret had wanted 3 and instead we had 1 and that one was Daniel and Daniel was ours. He had struggled after college. A series of sales jobs that started brightly and ended without clear explanation. A business venture with a friend that he never discussed in detail. 2 serious relationships that ended both times, with the woman leaving and Daniel explaining to us that she simply hadn't understood him. He borrowed money from us twice in his late 20s, smaller amounts, both paid back eventually. And so we didn't add those debts to any ledger we should have been keeping. After Margaret died, he came home for 2 weeks. He was present, he was helpful. He sat with me at the kitchen table and we talked about her for hours, about her laugh, about the way she sorted the mail standing at the counter without ever sitting down, about her habit of nomming the birds at the feeder even though she wasn't entirely certain she had the species right. Those 2 weeks were real. I still believe they were real. I do not think the grief was a performance. I think what happened is something more complicated and more terrible than a man who never loved his father. I think Daniel is a man who loves his father and also has learned, somewhere in the long record of small surrenders that constitute his adult life, that love and exploitation can coexist in him without apparent contradiction. That is perhaps the most honest and most painful thing I have ever written. I called him from the bank parking lot. He answered on the second ring, which tells you something. Either he had been expecting the call or he had nothing to hide, and I was not yet sure which was worse. Dad, everything okay? No, I said, I need you to explain to me what has happened to my money. There was a pause, not long, 2 seconds, maybe 3, but I have been listening to my son his entire life and I know the specific texture of his pauses. This one was not surprise, it was calculation. Dad, I can explain everything. Some of the investments are in transition, that's totally normal, that's just how these things. Daniel, I said his name the way I hadn't said it since he was 17 and I found a bottle of whiskey under his bed. Flat, final. I am sitting in a parking lot and my account has $211 in it. Do not tell me about transitions. Another pause, then the voice shifted, and this is the part that I replay most often. This is the part that lives in me with the most weight because it did not become the voice of a caught man. It became something softer, sadder, the voice of a boy. Dad, I'm in trouble. I've been in trouble for a while. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I could just get enough of a foundation together, I could turn it around and you'd never have to know and I would have put it all back before. How much is left? I asked. He told me, then he told me where the rest had gone. Gambling debts that had become the kind of debts that carry interest rates not found in any legal institution. A business deal that collapsed. The car, some of it sent to a woman I had never met in a city I had never visited. I did not ask him to explain her. I was not sure I had the capacity for that particular knowledge yet. I sat with the phone against my ear and I listened to my son tell me how he had spent his mother's careful life in 92 days. The blueberry pancakes sat in my stomach like stones. I want to tell you that I was angry. I was. But anger is not actually the largest thing I felt, and I promised myself when I started writing this that I would be honest about the largest things. The largest thing I felt was grief. Not for the money, or not only for the money. I felt grief for a version of my son that I had been protecting in my imagination long past the point when the evidence suggested he deserved that protection. I grieved for the Sunday calls that I had received as love and that were, at least in part, surveillance. I grieved for the way he said, "Don't worry about the account, Dad, I'll handle everything," and how warm those words had felt in my chest, how much I had wanted to believe them, how willing I had been to be believed too. I grieved for Margaret, who told me to let Daniel help and who could not have known what kind of help he had in him to give. I did not send him money to fix his debts. That is the first thing people ask when I tell this story, and I understand why they ask it. The answer is no. I have a friend, retired school teacher, known him 40 years, who told me, "You would not be helping him, you would be confirming to him that there is no cost." He was right. There is no version of saving Daniel with money that does not also save him from the lesson. I contacted an attorney. I contacted the bank. The power of attorney I had signed was reviewed. It transpired that Daniel had made several moves that were technically within the authority I had granted him and several that were not. The ones that were not are currently in the hands of people who understand these things better than I do. I will not write more about that because it is ongoing and because I am not yet sure what I want. What I want, I have spent a great deal of time thinking about what I want. I still have my pension, $2,100 a month. I still have my house. I have a small amount in a second account that Daniel did not have access to, a joint account I opened with my sister many years ago for a project we eventually abandoned and which I had simply forgot to consolidate. There's just over $4,000 in it. I found this out 3 days after the bank visit and I sat in my kitchen and I actually laughed. Not a happy laugh. The kind of laugh that comes out of you when the alternative is something you don't want to do in a kitchen where you can still smell the ghost of someone else's coffee. I have enough to live on, carefully, and I have always been a careful man. I have relearned the grocery store on a fixed budget, which is not actually so different from how Margaret and I always shopped. I have canceled several subscriptions I didn't need. I have learned which of my neighbors have fruit trees that produce more than they can use in a season. I have taken on 2 small consulting projects, old colleagues who needed someone who still understood the specific mechanical problem they were working on, and this has given me not just income but something I had lost without quite noticing. The sensation of being useful. I am not fine. I want to be clear about that. I am not the man who has turned his tragedy into a lesson and emerged lighter. I am a 63-year-old widower who trusted his son with the wrong thing and is rebuilding from $211 and some days that sits on me like weather. But I am also still here, in the house that Margaret and I paid off together, in the kitchen where I still make blueberry pancakes on Sunday mornings. For myself, just 1 portion now, with exactly the right amount of batter and no leftovers. Daniel has called twice since October. The first time I let it go to voicemail, he said he was sorry, he said he was getting help, he said he loved me. I listened to the message 4 times trying to locate the truth in it, and I think it is all true. I think he is sorry, I think he may be getting some version of help, I think he loves me. I have not called back. The second call came on what would have been Margaret's 62nd birthday. I picked up that time. I don't know exactly why, maybe because it was her birthday and she always believed in second chances more fluently than I did, and I wanted to feel close to that belief even if I couldn't quite hold it myself. We talked for 11 minutes. I did not forgive him. I did not refuse to forgive him. I asked him how he was eating and he said fine, and I said good, and then there was a long quiet between us that was not entirely uncomfortable, the way some silences between people who have known each other for a very long time are not entirely uncomfortable even when everything is broken. Before we hung up, he said, "Dad, I'm sorry about the money, I'm sorry about everything, but I need you to know I meant it when I said I wanted to take care of you. That part was real." I thought about that for a long time after. I think he is right that it was real. I also think that a person can mean something and still do the opposite of it. I think a person can love you and fail you so completely that the love becomes a kind of irrelevance for a while. I think Daniel is living in the particular misery of a man who has discovered what he is capable of and is not sure yet whether he can become capable of something else. I hope he can. I will not pretend otherwise because he is my son and I am his father, and that is a fact that does not dissolve in October bank statements. People my age, men my age, especially, are often told that we make ourselves vulnerable, that we are too trusting, too proud to ask for help until it's too late, too accustomed to handling everything ourselves to recognize when someone else's help is a different kind of danger. There is truth in this. I sat with my son's paperwork and a pen and I signed my name without reading every line because I had raised him and I thought that meant I knew him all the way through. You never know anyone all the way through. That is not a counsel of despair, it is simply the precondition of love. You love people in the knowledge that they contain rooms you have never entered. With most people, those rooms hold nothing troubling. With some people, in some seasons of their lives, the rooms hold things they haven't yet told themselves. What I know now that I would tell any man or woman in my position, any parent, any elder, anyone who has worked their whole life toward a safety that feels solid until the moment it is tested is this: love is not a credential. Your child loving you does not mean they are equipped to manage your life. Your trust in a person is not the same as an audit. Grief makes us soft in places we need to remain careful. And the word burden, when someone calls your financial independence a burden and offers to lift it from you, is not always a kindness. Sometimes it is a key. I am writing this from the kitchen table. It is early morning. The light comes through the window at an angle that has not changed in 32 years, landing on the same stretch of countertop where Margaret used to lean with her coffee. My coffee is beside me. The birds are at the feeder, some kind of sparrow that Margaret would have named with cheerful inaccuracy. I have $211 and a pension and a paid-off house and 40 years of being a careful man. It is enough to start again, it is not enough to forget. I am not trying to forget. I am trying to remember everything, the pancakes and the paperwork and the BMW in the driveway and the 11-minute phone call on her birthday, and to carry it the way you carry anything you can't put down, steadily, without letting it make you into someone smaller than you were before it happened. Margaret would have wanted that. I am doing my best.